Hello, everyone. Welcome here.
I'm Don Murray. Probably some of you have come to some other webinars, have seen me kicking around, and I'm here with Nick. Is this your first webinar?
This is absolutely my first webinar.
Nice. And he's one of the product managers on FME Flow and Flow Hosted. Did I get that right, Nick? Or do you want to elaborate?
Flow Hosted, the Hub, and some of our other cloud products.
Yep. To me, it's all the FME platform, and Nick's a really key guy. We've known about Nick, and you were here once before? Was it as a co-op or an intern or?
No, I was talking about working here after I worked at BCI, after I finished at BCIT, and then ended up going elsewhere, but always stayed in touch.
Yeah. And then our paths crossed, and we're really happy to have Nick as part of our team, and it's exciting times at SAFE, and
absolutely.
And Nick's a really great technical enthusiast with lots of great ideas, and works very closely with Stuart and myself, and a bunch of others, of course. But
just a couple,
And everybody knows Elizabeth. She's a webinar superstar, rock star, keeps us all going, and just does an amazing job with our webinars. And So what are we going to talk about this morning?
Yeah, so this morning, or I guess this evening, depending on where you're joining from, we're going to be talking about the 5 must-know use cases or scenarios for FME Flow Hosted.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. And I know, Dawn, you just briefly introduced Nick and yourself. Very excited to have the two of you join on today's webinar and lead us through today's content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is a good one.
Yeah, and we have Stuart and Dami as well joining on the back end, answering any questions that you might have throughout. So definitely get those in as we go along.
And we'll also try to reserve some time at the end for some Q&A as we finish up.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, speaking of which, before I hand things over to Nick and Dawn here, just a brief intro to our platform Livestorm if you are newer. We have the chat tab on the bottom right. It's really great to see people tuning in with where they are joining in from today. It looks like we've got representation from all over the world. Yeah, we have the questions tab as well. So that's where we'll ask if you can please drop any questions throughout the webinar, and we'll get to those as we go along here, and then at the end as well, as Nick mentioned. We do have a poll coming up, so keep an eye out for that on the polls tab. And then you can also share emoji reactions with us throughout. And then if you have any audio or video issues during the webinar at all, you can click the help button on the bottom left of your screen there.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, if you wish to download the slides, there's a handy download button on the top right. You can click that now, or you can also download them under handouts later on in the webinar. All right, with that, I will pass things over to Dawn to go through our agenda here.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Next slide. Perfect. Oh, we're going to do the poll first. So the poll question is, what is your experience with FME Flow Hosted? So are you going to launch that poll, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I've just launched that now. We've got a few different options.
Okay, great.
And I think, as expected with this webinar, the Still Exploring is taking the lead.
Yeah, Flow Hosted is a really great option. One of the things we take great pride at SAFE is all the different deployment options of FME Flow, and Flow Hosted is very definitely one of the main ways of deploying FME Flow. And so today you're going to learn just how easy it is and all the benefits it gives you. So yeah. So look at that, 64% of the people are not familiar with FME Flow. So you've come to the right place.
Yes.
We targeted it at the introductory level. So this is perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. I've closed that out now.
Okay. And so a bit of an introduction. So FME Flow Hosted contains all the features of FME Flow. The big thing, of course, is that you do not need to find anywhere to run it. You don't have to find any infrastructure. You don't have to worry about security and setting all that up, figuring out who's going to have access to it. You can just do all that. And so it really is a great way just to get, for many organizations, they want to get started with FME Flow. And FME Flow Hosted is a perfect way to get exposure to FME Flow. FME Flow Hosted is a perfect way to get access and start with FME Flow. It's just really easy. We even give you some free credit so you can just get started and then start to understand the value that FME Flow begins. But that's just one real good use case for FME Flow Hosted. Every time I say FME Cloud, Elizabeth, I'm going to put $1 into a jar, okay? Yeah, and again, we touched on this briefly. FME Flow Hosted is part of our deployment options. So the really nice things that FME Flow Hosted gives you is it gives you a lot of different options on the infrastructure side. You can start small and you can scale by just simply deciding, oh, I want a bigger machine. And then in a few minutes, you have a bigger machine. The flexibility of being able to bring it up, bring it down is really great. The separate infrastructure. So we have many organizations who they want to do data sharing with FME Flow, but they decide to do it with Flow Hosted because then it's outside their main infrastructure. And if it's public data anyway that they want to share, they put it in FME Flow Hosted and put it there. And then they know that the worst thing that's going to happen if people break into that machine is they're going to steal public data. They're not going to in any way have to put another hole through their infrastructure. So that's something to think about. It's always great. Also great for, again, proof of concepts. You want to do something outside your regular infrastructure. You're just in no way are you exposing yourself. So that's, in today's world of security breaches, that's really a valuable thing. And of course, it's Flow. It's compatible with FME Flow on-prem. And it does not matter what operating system you're using for form. You publish to Flow and it's going to work. And then you can move workflows from Flow to Flow Hosted and back again. So yeah, so those are just some of the great things about Flow Hosted. Yeah, it's a cloud-based, of course, and it's scalable, flexible. We touch on some things. You bring it up, bring it down, scale it up, scale it down, throw it away, start a new one, whatever you want to do. And it's really a great way to manage workflows. If you're migrating to the cloud, it can definitely be part of that scenario, either as a destination or as where you're trying things. The flexibility and just the cost effectiveness of it, we'll talk later, is really key. And yeah, so our platform, you're going to see some slight changes. We now are very clear about FME Form and FME Flow and how they fit together. FME Form is where we build things, we author, that's where everything is created. And FME Flow is where things are deployed to take advantage of all the solutions, build solutions across the enterprise. It's the one that has all the services. And the number of services are just growing. So if you want real time, it's FME Flow. If you want data products, it's FME Flow. And everything I say about FME Flow is also the same as FME Flow Hosted. And FME Flow Hosted has the advantage that it's managed by Safe Software. You do not have to worry about infrastructure. So yeah. And what is it? It's a cloud-based version of FME Flow. So we host it. We make sure you pick the version you want to run, and then we look after the underlying infrastructure for you. You have to, being a guy who has brought down my FME Flow Hosted by doing crazy things like, I wonder how many engines I can run on my FME Flow Hosted, and then crank the engines up to a ridiculously high number. It is possible to bring your FME Flow Hosted down, but again, we're not responsible for people like me who just do crazy things and then, oh yeah, okay, now I got to figure it out. But really,
when you do that, your infrastructure is isolated, so you're only impacting yourself when you do that.
Exactly. And yeah, and it is possible to recover, and then you learn, okay, yeah. So anyway. So some of the key benefits, of course, is no infrastructure management. You don't have to go to procurement to find a box. You don't have to worry about bandwidth. You don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. I want to play with FME Flow. You just launch an instance on Flow Hosted. Now you have it. It's ready to go. You know you can have the performance you need. You're going to have the networking you need. You're going to have everything you need to really give FME Flow and build your prototype, proof of concept, or deployment, data products, whatever you're going to want to do. You can just do it there. Oh, you build an application and it gets too big. It's easy to scale it. Or you were over optimistic and it's too small, so you make it bigger. Or you're over optimistic and it's too big, you can make it down. Or you can do lots of things. You can scale it up, scale it down to meet your needs. You can shut it down or bring it up depending on when you need it. And in today's world, security is a big deal. And that is another thing that you do not have to worry about.
Exactly. And so as we go into our use cases, we're going to touch on basically all of those topics. We'll do a few demos and we'll do a few discussions and have some beautiful diagrams. And as we go, if anyone ever has any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A. We'll have Stuart and Dami answer them, and I might catch the odd one as well. But we'll definitely have some time at the end to be able to talk a little bit more as well. So thank you very much for the introduction, Don. And I just wanted to reintroduce myself. So my name is Nick. I am the product manager for Flow Hosted, as well as Safe's other cloud products like FME Hub and some more internal products. So I am relatively new to Safe, but I'm very familiar, very comfortable with Safe's products and FME. I've been a longtime user. And coming from an IT and a GIS background, I think we've come up with some topics and some ideas today that really highlight the power of Flow Hosted and what it can do for an organization. So we're going to jump through some use case scenarios here. And why don't we just dive right in? One of the key Flow Hosted features is the speed at which it allows you to innovate. Spinning up a proof of concept in hours, being able to create a new application internally within a day is massive without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure and all the pieces that come with it. We really emphasize the speed point in Flow Hosted, where deploying FME Flow in minutes is really possible and easy. I'm going to do a demo in a moment, and you'll see it's a matter of minutes to get up and running here. So at a high level, like a lot of server-based infrastructure, there's often sometimes some steps, but it's really 5 easy steps to start building with Flow Hosted, where you build your workflows in form to do the actions you want to do with the data. You sign up for Flow Hosted. You can spin up an instance right away, grab a coffee, and I'm not kidding when I say 5-6 minutes later, your Flow environment is ready to go, and you can log in and start working. It's really that fast and amazing. So why don't we show it? We talk a lot about it, but I think it's going to be good to show what actually works here, or how it actually works, I should say. And I've pre-recorded the demo, and I might pause it once or twice as we go, but it really starts with signing up for Flow Hosted. If you haven't created an FME account already, creating one is fast and easy, just like every website. We can do our sign up, and you can also sign in with Google or LinkedIn or GitHub. Created the account. Obviously, there's the confirm your email part here. And as soon as you do that, you'll get a couple questions about just setting up your profile. And already we're in the Flow Hosted setup area. So what we're doing right now is setting up our account information. What is the name of our account? And what's going to be the base sort of URL that we use for all of the work that you do moving forward? As we go through, just fill in a little bit of location information for tax reasons to make sure we're charging the appropriate taxes. And then we can start right away with a trial. So we have 2 options for starting with a trial with Flow Hosted. Number one, they both involve a $250 credit, and that's enough to get you almost a month at an entry-level instance with Flow Hosted. If you associate a credit card right away, you can get started right away, or you can request a trial without a credit card, and it just goes through a quick approval process. Once you've gone through either one of these steps, you'll be right away into your dashboard in your account in Flow Hosted. And first thing you want to do is create an instance. So we're going to give it a name. We're going to give it a URL that you can access your Flow instance at. Notice the slug that's already there from your account. You can give it some descriptions, and choosing the versions. You can choose the most recently released versions. Sometimes you have beta versions as well. Choose the region in which the data is going to be hosted. So this is a key important piece here. Various countries have various laws, especially around data privacy and customer information. So if you need to host it within the EU, we have options in Frankfurt or Ireland or Stockholm or London. If you're closer in the more Asia Pacific part of the world, hosting it in Sydney is a great idea. And for most in North America, hosting it in Canada or the US are the great options there as well. And then we can go down to choosing the type of instance that you're wanting to use. So type of instance is really just based on the size, how much RAM, how many CPUs that you expect you would need to use. And you're also not locked in. You can adjust a lot of these measurements or these metrics and even the size of your instance after the fact as well. And we'll show you that in a bit. Some default alerts and then just a quick summary. And so all I'm going to do is just hit create instance. And this spinning circle will disappear very quickly for us on our demo, but it's usually about 5-6 minutes. And all of a sudden you can see this green running at the top now. Our instance is up and running. I can download my login details. So this is really important. You can only do this one time, the download. And so you want to make sure that you save that file properly. You log in with the details from that file. And wow, all of a sudden we're into Flow Hosted. The demo was only 2 minutes, 14 seconds, but in reality, this is about 6-7 minutes. Yeah, and Elizabeth had a great point about versions. So when choosing the version of Flow Hosted of Flow that you're running in Flow Hosted, you really need to make sure that your build number is either the same or less than the version that you're running, or sorry, greater than the version that you're running with FME Flow, the desktop tool that you're using to author all your workspaces. Sometimes there are feature differences between the versions, and so you really need to make sure that you account for those differences there. So let's move on to the next slide here. One of the key sort of focuses or pieces on getting up to speed quickly is you also get the best technology that comes with it. The SAFE is responsible, rather, for maintaining Flow Hosted and keeping the infrastructure up to date. We focus a lot on the latest technologies behind the screen, security and addressing any vulnerability issues, but also just monitoring overall health of every instance that we're running all the time. So we're constantly looking at things and adjusting. And we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the processes that we do as well to help keep everything up to date and latest and greatest. I wanted to we're going to have a few customer examples as we go through of some of our great Flow Hosted customers. And this is a great example from PlanView Utility Services, where they've created a platform for evaluating permit applications and looking at underlying infrastructure. So they were able to use Flow Hosted to reduce their turnaround time to just minutes, whereas originally it was 15 to 20 days, where it required potentially GIS people, administrators to go in and search databases, search filing cabinets even. And now Flow Hosted is able to do all the searching, all the aggregating, produce the report, and automates 95% of the calls or of the tickets raised about underlying infrastructure. That's huge. That's a whole department that is better used in other aspects of the organization now, and Flow Hosted is able to take care of that. And you're going to see a number of examples as we go through, and it's case after case of the huge time savings and efficiencies that are gained when using Flow Hosted. We've talked a little bit about the speed, but the resources, the technical infrastructure is easily one of the most important Flow Hosted components and makes it so easy to deploy without having to worry about your IT department. And I come from an IT background, so I can talk bad about myself here. The underlying overhead of IT infrastructure is big, and it's very important, and it's taken very seriously in organizations. And luckily, we can do a lot of the work without having to involve internal processes in a lot of circumstances. Configuration, for example, is a great easy tool easy process that we have in Flow Hosted. Adjusting disk sizes, even changing the size of your instance. Don had alluded to the idea that maybe your project is way more popular than you ever expected it to be, and switching from a professional to an enterprise level service box is easy and takes minutes. And we also have a fantastic API that we're going to dive deeper into later on in the presentation here. Even things like upgrades have been made so much easier and faster. We actually have some brand new functionality in 2024 that makes it even easier. There are often cases where there's a need to upgrade, whether we've released a new version of Flow or we have updated infrastructure or you just need larger infrastructure. The upgrade process can literally be done in minutes from start to finish. And it's just a matter of functionality we have in Flow Hosted, where we can clone your existing instance into a new instance, restore a backup with all your files and database information. And then we've got this great new feature that lets you actually change your URL. So you can rename your old box something different and rename your new one to match the naming conventions so that you have maybe 3-4 minutes of downtime. This is a fantastic new thing and allows you to basically upgrade without having to change your URL anymore, keeping everything easy internally as well. We haven't talked about this too much publicly yet, but it's been amazing and it works super well. And we're gonna do a blog post about that specific feature pretty soon as well. The key of this is, right, you spend less time on administration and operations. Not everyone has a strong IT department behind them or has the resources within them to be able to help you every step of the way, and this is where we come in here. Another great example we have is from Cochranville, where this is a pretty straightforward application, but again, the power of Flow Hosted really shines here, where users get regular formatted Excel reports that contain crop data processed from Salesforce, and they have FME form build a workflow, collect all this information. We push it up to Flow so it can repeat those processes on a regular basis. And then it delivers it by email. And again, not having to have the human intervention ever needed for this is huge. And users can receive their data at any given point, any time of the day. It really allows people to get data live, fresh, on demand without having to jump through hoops. Next big important part of Flow Hosted is around maximizing uptime. We talked about upgrades and API access and things like that, but just as important in any organization are managing the potential for disaster and monitoring what's going on in your infrastructure. So we work with what's called a shared responsibility model when it comes to Flow Hosted. We're going to dive into this in more detail, but what this essentially means is SAFE, our customers, and our platform provider all share responsibility for certain components of making sure that you are running effectively and all of the pieces work well together. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. But what that also allows us to do is to build out alerts and notifications about our infrastructure and have some really granular, awesome reporting abilities that you can get to different locations. Email to Slack, have it send a webhook, and combinations thereof. These notifications are key. We can monitor all sorts of different metrics that we track in Flow Hosted. But why don't, instead of me just talking about it, let's just show a little 2-minute demo of how it can all work for you here. Okay, this is in Flow Hosted specifically at the moment. These are, we're going to set up some alerts that talk about the infrastructure. So Flow itself has its own alerting engine for metrics that are measurable by the software itself. What we're setting up today are monitoring and measurements of the actual server itself and the infrastructure that runs Flow. Because it's just as important as the alerts that you get out of Flow is to make sure that the box itself is running beautifully. And so on every instance, you'll see we have some defaults set up here. Every time you spin up an instance, we have notifications where if your main disk goes up above 90% of usage, it's going to alert the account owner. Or if part of Flow hasn't been running well, it's going to alert the account owner. But then we can also set up our own custom alerts with our own custom thresholds and send them to notify individuals specifically. So we have a number of different measurements that we can track and monitor: disk usage, number of engines used, memory usage. I'm going to look at temporary disk right now. Temporary disk is where things like your uploads that your users do are saved, temporary files essentially. And I want to keep an eye on it and see if it gets above 75% of use for more than 10 minutes. I want to know about it. The temporary disk is a disk that gets basically wiped and recreated when you restart or when you shut down and restart an instance. And so this might be an indicator that you need to do a shutdown and a startup just to clear the disk out again. And it's asking for the name and who to notify. And there it is. All of a sudden, we have a running out of temp space alert set up in the middle there that allows you to get notified. But what if I want to notify a number of people? I want to receive it in Slack. I want a webhook. At the account level, we can actually set up services and groups of services and people to receive notifications. And you can apply these to any instance you have running. So under the services here, you see we have a few different things set up here. We have an email, we have a Slack channel, and a webhook that will receive data from Flow Hosted whenever these alerts are triggered. And I'm just going to set up another quick one, just a quick email one. We're going to pretend that I have a super executive high level priority one help desk. And that's what we're setting up right now. And they're only going to get a very specific alert. This is important that a certain group sees these alerts. We're going to create that. We can send a test alert, and I'll receive the email. But now we can actually create groups as well. So I don't always want to have an alert that goes to one individual. I want to go out to a group, and a group can be comprised of email, Slack, webhooks. And so I'm going to send it to everybody. This is a major alert, and I want everyone to see it and know it. And you notice I didn't check the one I just created, but I will in a moment. So I know that's going to trouble some people. There we go. And we're going to create the group. And so now I have a few groups, and I can go back to my instance and change the alert settings to, instead of notifying me individually, I'm going to have it notify an entire group of people. When the disk gets above 90%, it's going to my major executive notifications group that I had just created. And it's just that easy. Knowing what's going on with your infrastructure is a really challenging part of managing infrastructure in the IT world. And we've done some really amazing things to make this as easy as I've ever seen it with any product ever. Being able to get it into your own systems, your own ticketing systems, even with the webhooks, are huge. We have quite a number of clients who integrate it with things like Zendesk or have a Slack channel set up for only the most important emergencies. And it works amazingly well for those scenarios. So we're going to move forward here and talk a little bit about the other component here of disaster recovery. So the alerts are fantastic for knowing what's going on at the time. Disaster recovery is a whole separate department in a lot of IT departments here. We spend a lot of time and energy around backups. Every time you start an instance, every time you restart an instance, we take a backup. Every 24 hours, we take a backup. We also allow you to trigger your own backup to be created. And what this does is it creates a whole snapshot of your entire Flow hosted Flow instance. So all of your workspaces, all of your settings, we just take a snapshot and save it. And you even have settings as to how many backups you keep. You can keep 2, you can keep 12, and you can monitor those and customize that as you need. Now, backups are great, but restoring backups traditionally in the IT world has always been a less fun exercise. But in FME Flow Hosted, it's just as easy. You can see with the animated GIF here, you choose your backup, you can hit rollback, and 5 to 10 minutes, it'll be restored just like nothing ever happened at that exact date and time. It's really an incredible process too, and it's so rare to see something so fast and easy. And once it's up and running, like I said, it's like nothing ever changed. This is huge, and in the world today of lots of users having access to platforms, mistakes can be made, and this is a great way to be able to just roll it back without any worry. So our next major component here we wanted to talk about today was all around security. And security has a couple different sort of definitions when talking about Flow and Flow hosted. But first thing I wanted to talk about here is, again, we talked about the shared responsibility model. And so Flow hosted is built with 3 parties that come and work together. We have our customers, we have Safe Software, who provides the software and the platform, and then we have our infrastructure provider, which in our case, we're using Amazon Web Services. And so the responsibility of a safe, secure working environment is spread over all 3 of these groups. Amazon being responsible strongly for the technology, the networking, the security, infrastructure, and of course, they're world-renowned, and we'll talk about them more in a moment. Then we have us. We provide you the platform to be working together in Flow and Flow hosted, and we take responsibility for operating system and networking internally and vulnerability management and identifying when we need to do patches and testing and support. And then lastly is the customer, and the customer is really focused on being responsible for who has access to your infrastructure and any of the configuration and any of the settings, especially around security, that FME Flow specifically provides you as well. And the 3 groups working together really make a solid team. Amazon, they provide a very secure data center, right? And from our perspective and from our clients' perspective, really, it's great to let them focus on the things that they're great at. Things like redundancy and availability, things like business continuity, even physical security of your data center, monitoring of infrastructure, maintenance, risk management, security and compliance with hundreds of security standards around the world. It's great that they can run it, they work with it, and that's what they do best. Now, In Flow Hosted, we spend a lot of time around security and building Flow Hosted from the ground up with security in mind. All of the data that we keep in Flow Hosted is encrypted, and so that ensures that only those with the key or with credentials can access the data. It helps prevent things like data leakage, unauthorized access, things like that. We spend a lot of time and energy ensuring that automated system backups are working well, SSL encryption, of course. And what's really important from a data security perspective is the single tenancy model. And what that means is the FME Flow instance that we build, the instance we had on here, is on its own dedicated machine. I'm going to call it that for now. And that machine only has your files and is only belonging to you. And there's no way to be able to access another account or another organization's data if a malicious actor were somehow to get in, or just by accident you can see other data. It doesn't happen because it doesn't exist on the same infrastructure that you're working on. And even from a safe software perspective, we have a very hard time accessing people's infrastructure because we lock it down and create such a high level of security around it. And it makes a big difference in ensuring that your data stays yours. But then we also spend a lot of time monitoring more what we call our day-to-day operations. So we're monitoring for vulnerabilities every day, and we work with our own internal IT security groups and external services as well. We're continuously doing vulnerability testing, and we work with some great third parties around working on annual risk assessments, penetration testing, all sorts of evaluations, and we're in constant contact with our partners to make sure that platforms like Flow Hosted and any of our other cloud products as well are safe and secure and always up to date. And our team does an amazing job of monitoring that. But that's not very helpful unless the customer can also monitor and manage their own security. And so we give you your own abilities. You can do IP whitelisting, for example. So if you only want people working out of your head office and they all work from the same IP address or the same range, you can set that up so that only they can access your Flow Hosted instance. And so you can add extra layers of protection and security as well if you would like. You can block certain ports or open up certain ports as necessary as you work as well. One of the most important things in IT security in general, and is most important to us, comes around patching. So we are always updating our infrastructure whenever there's new patches for operating systems or for some of the libraries that we use internally. And we give you control over how you can apply updates. You can say, I don't want patching. We really don't recommend that. And I think in the IT world, you should never do that to an internet connected device. But again, we give you the power to choose. A lot of our updates can happen behind the scenes without a lot of interruption into your process or processes. And then we also have processes by which updates can be applied on a restart or reboot of the instance. And you can go in and just manually say, okay, at 2 a.m., let's schedule the reboot, and then the instance will be updated then. Or you can trigger it to happen just right now. Do all my updates, and away we go. This is more at the operating system level when there's an update to the Linux versions that run behind the scenes. When it comes to updating Flow itself and the tooling around, that's where we leave it up to you to decide how you want to do that. And as we talked about earlier, we have all the upgrade processes that make it really quick and easy. So we have Tessera Systems here as another example of a great Flow Hosted use case. And they actually lean pretty heavily on using other Amazon products as well that integrate really well with Flow Hosted. They use Flow Hosted to process data that lives in Amazon S3. S3, for those who don't know, is picture Dropbox, a file repository. And then they use various mechanisms within Amazon to notify Flow Hosted when there are changes in data or when processes need to run. And so they use this in the insurance world to help identify and re-identify areas that could be identified as high risk. And it allows the Insurance Bureau of Canada to react almost on the fly to changes in physical infrastructure on the ground, in municipalities, and conditions with minimal effort. Okay, this is the biggest one that a lot of people love Flow Hosted for, is you can actually save a lot of money. It's not always just dollars and cents, and we'll talk about some of this here in a moment. But we have a number of different ways we can also interact with Flow Hosted in terms of account pay-as-you-go model. We have some subscription models. We've got or we have, sorry, plan models. And then also we have our enterprise subscriptions with Safe that cover Flow Hosted, also for other products, and can include Flow Hosted as well. We talk about money. We provide you some really great monitoring tools. And we talked about this a little bit in the alerts, but these monitoring tools are great in evaluating your the infrastructure that you're currently running. This example is, these two charts here are from a server that is running very healthy. They have 8 gigs of RAM. They're running the size of instance with 8 gigs of RAM, and on average, they're using 6. So that's probably a pretty good fit for where they are now. If they were starting to hit that 8 gig mark all the time, then you'd be able to realize that maybe I need to do an upgrade here. And all of a sudden things will speed up a little bit. And same thing with the server load. You can have these workspaces that can pull in a lot of data, a lot of crunching, and you can see how much processor is actually being used. And so it allows you to keep the decision-making process about the size and the scale of your infrastructure to yourself and decide how you want to handle that as best as you can. The saving money piece comes in a number of different ways as well. We have built-in scheduling, for example, with these instances. So if you're on a plan where you're paying as you go for Flow, we can set up custom schedules that automatically turn on and off your server. Perhaps you only need it for your working day from 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can set up a schedule that at 8 a.m. every day, your instance starts up and is up and running within a minute or two. And then at the end of the day, it shuts down automatically. And so you're not paying for overnight when you're not using it. This is also great for organizations that may have a strong need for Flow Hosted, but maybe it's only for an hour a day. But 2 a.m, you've got this regular job that you need to run. Set it up to start at 2 a.m, have it turn off at 4, and it just does that every day on its own. And you can schedule within Flow to run your workspace within that time as well. This gets a lot of use in sort of certain specific use cases with instances, and it's really great. The other piece that is phenomenally awesome when it comes to Flow Hosted is our API. So for those who don't know, an API is essentially a communication protocol by which you can do actions in Flow Hosted. And I just have a short snippet here, but every action that you can do in Flow Hosted, whether it's creating a new instance or rebooting one or resizing something, can be done through our API. And this means you can build some really powerful internal workflows that leverage your API without you even having to go into Flow Hosted and click anything. And you could start up a new instance. And so I've actually got an example here. And again, this is just an example of what you can do with the API, where you receive some data in a S3 bucket or in your Dropbox or in your Google Drive. First thing you can do is you can have a little script that checks, is my Flow Hosted instance running? If it's not, start it up. While it's starting up, send information to your queue for data processing. And then once it's up and running, Flow Hosted can run all the workspaces it needs to do. And maybe in this case, all it's doing is spitting out data at the end. This is a really cool use case where you can basically spin up Flow Hosted on demand and even shut it down on demand at the end.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a great point, Nick. Everything in the GUI can be done through the API because the FME Flow Hosted team did it right, and they built the APIs underneath all the GUI. So you can resize machines, even you can do anything that you see through the GUI. So it's really great. And this is a workflow that is really great. And one of the ones I've seen a customer do is they bring it up and then they shut it down at the end. And how do they know when to shut it down? They actually shut it down in the last workspace. It's finishing finishing the whole workflow, because then they know it actually is done, rather than in the earliest instances they left 2 hours. But
yeah,
sometimes 2 hours is too long, and in the worst case, 2 hours is too short. And so. Yeah,
and so those are really great examples when it comes to sort of building an application with FME Flow. And we've had some great webinars on building applications with that, where you have a need for once or twice a week for it to run, or once or twice a day, and you can have it start itself up and then shut itself down with just a little bit of interacting with the API. And it's a really powerful thing that not a lot of organizations provide the level of access that we do within the API.
Yeah.
We have a great example in part of that too, with the Arkansas GIS office. And so they run their entire open data portal on FME Flow Hosted, and with FME Flow, of course. A lot of their data already existed in Amazon's environment, and they were able to use FME to migrate over 7 terabytes of data and creating a portal by which users can go in and download whatever data that they need on demand, customized to their needs. For them, it saved them hundreds of thousands, saving almost 74% over the 3 years of just migrating to Flow Hosted to serve up the data. And we actually see open data portals as a really common use case for Flow Hosted. There is not an ETL tool out there that does spatial data like FME does, and it works amazingly well for open data portals and GIS groups as you modernize and make your data more available to your organizations. So flexible pricing makes FME Flow Hosted a great option in many use cases. We have Flow Hosted's available sort of a pay by the hour use case, so it's great for the application that needs to run once a day. We have annual plans where if you're running it 24/7, you can have some significant savings over sort of the pay by the hour plans. And it's also available as part of FME enterprise subscriptions, where you also get Flow and you get Flow Host or Form as part of your package. And those are tailored to the type of organization that you're in and are really an amazing value as well. And Flow Hosted can be made available as part of that as well. And then lastly, we also have an extensive partner network where in countries all over the world, we have partners who help you implement Flow or Form solutions, but can also be a partner in managing your Flow Hosted instances. So it could be even easier. You don't even have to manage your own Flow Hosted instance. You can have a partner do it with you. And that's been a phenomenal program that has been extremely successful and really leverages the power of our partners to be able to provide you a whole holistic solution when it comes to working with Flow Hosted. Wow. We went through the 5 big points pretty quickly here, and I've seen a few questions come up, and we'll get to some in a moment here.
I just want to say something about the enterprise subscription. Sorry.
Absolutely.
My mic was on mute, so it's all on. Yeah, so a lot of if there's one thing we know about the world of data, the data landscape is changing very quickly, and we have some organizations who are moving to the cloud, some organizations are moving some things from the cloud to on-prem. And it's just hard to predict how that landscape's going to change. And with enterprise subscriptions, that you can just move things around, get more Form, get more Flow, move things from Flow to Flow Hosted, and you just have unlimited flexibility. And so that's really, and we really wanted to make sure that FME Flow Hosted was part of that because it is a key one of our deployment options. And one of the things we pride ourselves in is making it easy. And so that's why it's part of that. So thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. So we've gone through our major use cases for Flow Hosted here. And so we have just a few key points in summary here. Really, Flow Hosted, being able to deploy it in minutes is massive and allows you to be nimble and flexible in ways that you could never be before, especially with heavy data loads and processing. Partnering with organizations like AWS to provide top-level security and scalability brings a sort of a unique perspective or a unique component to Flow Hosted and really leverages everyone's own powers. Spending less time doing administration and operations, time is money. And at the end of the day, being able to simplify and streamline your life is massive. And then as well with pricing, the flexible pricing options we offer. And just to be clear, the pricing that is available on our website, we don't hide behind any of that. That includes your license for Flow as well. That's not just the infrastructure, it's actually including your ability to use Flow as well.
Yeah.
And the one major unique difference, which I forgot to highlight, was that the licenses that you get for Flow through Flow Hosted allow you an unlimited number of engines. And that allows you to run multiple jobs concurrently. Now, I say unlimited. Don's example, if I were to spin up 128 engines at the same time on a small instance, may not go very well for you. But again, it gives you that flexibility. And even programmatically through our API, you can have a new engine spin up, run the special job you have, and then shut it down.
And that's really an important capability. We know the capacity of the of the machine. And so depending on what you're talking to, you can have more engines. If you spend a lot of time talking to web services, the engine's going to spend a lot of time waiting for results. And so you can have more engines. If you're doing heavy duty raster or LiDAR or other heavy duty grinding, then you're going to require fewer engines. So it just gives you that flexibility. Yeah. So
absolutely. And so being able to turn on more, shut and turn them off as you need is a huge perk to Flow Hosted and using Flow in that environment as well.
Yeah, and Flow Hosted also, I know we didn't touch on it because it's a very advanced thing, but Flow Hosted also does support the remote engine service. We're not going to talk about that today, but if anybody was wondering about that, in fact, it can act as the primary flow to control distributed processing.
And my brain is currently processing a new webinar that I want to do in the new year around Flow Hosted and remote engines as well, because there's a couple really interesting use cases.
And there's some questions that we're going to talk about at the end that really are going to relate to that when we get to the questions. Yeah,
exactly.
So about SAFE, for those who don't know, obviously I'll let you do the reading, but we've been doing this for 30 years, and we build data pipe. Many organizations use us. You'll see a big fancy digital twin. You won't even know we're there, but we are the data pipe, and you can just see we have 25,000 organizations around the world that use us. Yeah, and we love what we do. So Gartner, we're in the top right corner, which is the one we want to be. We are not fourth in that quadrant. That quadrant is alphabetical. And so we should have been called Aardvark software, but we weren't thinking. And so, and we're also recognized as a customer's choice in North America and the mid-size enterprise segments. Yeah, so we're proud of that. This is our customers telling Gartner about all the tools they use and which ones that they really like to work with. So we're in good company there.
As the webinar wraps up, you'll be able to download the PDF copy of this webinar, and all of these links are included in there, so you don't have to worry about scribbling them down right now. We've got some great general FME resources available that you can go and access at any time, as well as the Academy. The Academy is an amazing resource where we provide training to any of our users and often live or on demand. So many great options there as well. And our support platform and our webinars as well obviously become a great resource for learning more about FME and the whole SAFE ecosphere. We also have a couple podcasts that we've talked about our low code, no code, and data integration powerful abilities. And you can go click that link and go check them out as well. Don, I think you wanted to talk about this particular one.
Yeah, come to Seattle. We're doing our big Pika Data Integration Conference next year, and traditionally it's been in Vancouver, but this year we're doing it in Seattle. And book early. It's looking like we're going to sell this thing out, and so we're really excited about that. Registration opens in 2 weeks. Yeah, and if you have a solution you want to present, please do reach out. We're really excited, and Nick will be there. I'll be there. A bunch of folks. Elizabeth will be there. A bunch of folks from SAFE will be there. It's going to be great.
And the one thing I wanted to also point out about the Pika Data is it's not just designed for the high-level power user of FME. Yeah. This is an amazing event that allows people who are brand new to the environment and people who have worked in it for 25 years to come together and really learn more, and everyone comes out of it learning something new. Yeah. This is not a high-level nerd conference. This is a really holistic event that covers everything that you want to know about FME. Yeah. It's a really great event.
Yeah, and the name says it all. It's about data integration in an FME context, of course, but if you just want to learn about what people are doing with data integration, some of the user solutions are just amazing, and it is mind-blowing.
And lastly, before we get into any QA, if you have any questions at all about Flow Hosted, about Flow, about Form, or any of the SAFE products, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can email info@safe.com, and one of our team will get back to you quite quickly there. And then lastly, almost lastly, got a couple links here specifically around Flow Hosted, around FAQ and some tips and troubleshooting, our pricing, the support policy for how we work with our partners and managing support for Flow Hosted as well. And lastly, as well, you get a badge in our community by joining this webinar. So you can go to community.safe.com and use today's code to get that coveted webinar badge that is so hotly desired. And questions. So we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes here. But
there's one in particular I want to address because it's really an important one. And it comes down to data visibility. There was a few questions went by and about, I have data on my local drive, my UNC path. How do I see it with FME Flow Hosted? And this is a fundamental question. And this is why we have FME Flow available on different deployments, right? And so if all your data is on premise, probably FME Flow Hosted is not the solution for you, right? Sometimes people ask us, when are you going to only be in the cloud? And our answer is when all the data is in the cloud. And so if you have data being dropped internally to a UNC path or some other resource that is not visible from the cloud, there's no magic. There's no way that FME Flow Hosted is going to be able to punch a hole without IT support to get access to it. Now, we do have this thing with FME. That doesn't mean FME Flow Hosted is over and done, because if you're in a hybrid environment, which more and more organizations are, or maybe you're using different clouds, you can use FME Flow Hosted with an FME remote engine service that actually runs inside your environment, or you just use traditional FME Flow. And a lot of organizations do that, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So, but this is just, again, this is really great for the things that Nick had talked about, or if all the things you're talking to are already accessible from the cloud. The other thing to remember is that FME Flow Hosted is running Linux version of FME Flow. And there was somebody, I think Randy Murphy pointed that out in one of the questions. And so there is a small number of things that are not supported by Linux because we're using third-party libraries that are only available on Windows, but these are in the edge cases. And so if you're using state-of-the-art things like ArcGIS Online and things like that. But yeah, but the whole thing around data visibility is a really thing. There's no way FME Flow Hosted can see data on a local disk that's behind a firewall that isn't accessible outside of your organization. So I just wanted to just talk about that. Yeah. What else, Nick?
I see a question in here that hasn't been answered yet around Office 365 and can flows be integrated with Office 365? The answer is absolutely yes. We have integrations built with all sorts of Office 365 or Microsoft related infrastructure, including being able to read your documents in OneDrive, read and write Excel or Word docs, or even a PowerPoint. SharePoint as well, yeah. All of that. And those are all done with native APIs built directly with those partners, and they work beautifully.
And this is just the beginning of the discussion. If there's systems out there that we do not directly connect to, do let us know. The FME Hub, hub.safe.com, is growing every single day, and it has new connections. So there was some questions around Python and things like that. Let us know what you need. We will never say that FME Flow is done or FME Flow Hosted is done or FME is done. It's constantly being updated, adding new things. And FME Flow Hosted is just an amazing result. FME Hub is an amazing thing that constantly expands the ecosystem that we can reach out to. So, yeah.
And Hub being one of my products means it has great integration with all of the other FME products, but is also getting a pretty substantial update coming in the next couple of months. That really lays the groundwork for us to do some really cool things in the future.
Absolutely.
Nothing we do at SAFE stays stagnant.
No.
It's always growing and evolving, and it's a big deal for us. It looks like, as far as I can tell, every other question that has been asked so far has been answered. There's been some great questions on requirements and using Python and installing custom Python libraries. Everything in there is possible. Parameters for emails. Yeah, I think unless there's any other questions that come in the next moment here.
No. And any question you've asked that hasn't been answered, we will answer and get back to you. So don't worry about that. And please do reach out to us at any time. You think about something later, info@safe.com. Yeah. We pride ourselves in something called the restaurant model. That means we're like a high-end restaurant. We will give you the service that you need well above anything you've ever seen before from a software vendor. So, and that's one of our differentiators. So, yeah. So, and thank you everybody for your time. We really appreciate, we know you're all busy, and we really appreciate all your time. And please do give us feedback. And thank you, Elizabeth and Nick. Great job, Nick.
Thank you, Don. Thank you.
Yeah, great job, Nick and Don both. And thanks, Stuart and Dami on the back end too for all the Q&A help. Awesome. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye for now.